idealized masculine image that people are chasing through using these drugs?
Yeah, I definitely think so. My PhD research is specifically looking at the ties between those idealized forms of masculinities and the use of anabolic steroids, things such as like performative masculinity, how people are trying to sort of embody, what their belief of what a man should look like, along with social media. These sort of idealized forms of masculinity are created, and people try and embody these through their physique. As a society, we've moved away from more of the manual labor of our past, particularly in working class communities. And that can be linked to anabolic steroids, this idea of like embodying historical masculinity. So maybe people feel that increasing their muscularity sort of embodies that.
The opposite is also true. This sharp wedge has a large mass, so that means that when my wife hits it with this low mass stick, the wedge doesn't get much forward velocity, so it can't pierce me.
Linking size and success, being small is seen as a big disadvantage and something you can't do much about. Until now. Limb lengthening surgery is a long, expensive and painful undertaking, which nonetheless is growing in popularity, including here in the UK. Costing anything up to an eye-watering £120,000, it claims to be able to help patients grow by a staggering 13 centimetres taller. It was pioneered by this man, Gavril Elizarov, a Soviet doctor treating injured soldiers returning from the Second World War. Techniques have changed during the last 70 years, but many of the principles remain the same. A hole is drilled into the leg bone, which is then literally broken in two. A metal rod is put inside and held in place by a number of screws. It's this rod which is lengthened a little bit each day, extending until the patient reaches their desired height and their bones are finally allowed to heal back together. The surgery was once reserved for people with a serious injury or deformity, but an increasing number of people are having the procedure simply because they just don't like their height. It's available in more than a dozen countries, from Germany, the US, Russia, Serbia, India, South Korea, Turkey, Greece, Italy, and even here in the UK. As a 5'7" mountain of a man myself, I can understand why people might be tempted by this kind of surgery. But taking such drastic measures for just a few inches does feel a bit extreme. Not to mention the time, the pain, and the sheer cost of the procedure, there's also the very real risk of serious complications. But some people are willing to take those risks. I want to meet these people to find out what led them to getting the surgery, what their experiences have been, and how their lives have changed, for better or for worse.
So I guess 5'4" is when I got the surgery done, and now I'm 5'7". And I'm not the tallest person in the room, but in terms of like perspective, like I still definitely think about height. I just think about it a lot less, and I don't think about it as me being too short anymore.
Obviously, you were really aware of the potential consequences and that they can be quite severe before you got the surgery. Were you scared before getting it, or how were you feeling?
I think you would be naive to say that you weren't scared. It is kind of crazy. You're breaking both of your femurs broke both of my femurs to get this surgery. So it's like, you kind of have to rationalize that it is a wild thing that you're doing, but if it's going to make you happier in the long run, then it's worth it.
Before I let Sam go, I had a final question. It's one thing having the surgery at a world-leading hospital, but what about the people going to the cheaper clinics, popping up all over the world?
There are people that get these surgeries done by...
In order to get a sense of just how serious a procedure it is, I wanted to speak with someone who had met with complications. I got chatting to a British man who had the surgery 5 years ago, growing from 5'6" to 5'9". Barney's situation is different. He had a condition which meant he required surgery to straighten his legs. He then opted to have the leg lengthening procedure at the same time, reassured that it could all be done together and it wouldn't affect his recovery time. Unfortunately, he's been dealing with problems ever since. So, can you describe what your complications were?
Yeah, okay, so really my only complication was the fact that my bone separation was happening faster than my bone growth would happen. So basically my bones were being pulled apart at quite a fast rate, but my bone growth wasn't there. So therefore on the x-rays you could sort of see it, sort of like, the gap getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and nothing. So I basically had just 2 sticks of bone and a little metal bar in between hand.
So your bones effectively didn't grow back together?
Yeah, that's exactly it, yeah. You go in and you're left with the belief that, it's only going to be 3 months out of my life, and you cater for that. And so you get so many people who book this time, have a surgery, get spat out the other side, and whether they go to China, whether they go to Japan, Hong Kong, and it's totally global. But their employer is like, you're not fit, you can't come back. And that's when mortgage repayments suddenly start collapsing, they're unemployed, and not only are they unemployed, they're unemployable. Yeah, when things go wrong, then you kind of do need a support network. Fortunately, I managed it. I was fortunate, but yeah, if it goes wrong, it goes catastrophically wrong.
Well, yeah, would you recommend it to someone? Would you recommend it as someone should get?
That's a difficult one. Would I recommend it? Because, the cost, financially, it is whatever it is. But everything else is life-changing, and there is an immense amount of pain. It's like every nerve in your legs are being stretched. And so therefore there are times when you can't escape anywhere in your head from the pain. It is absolutely excruciating. I think if it was easy, let's face it, everyone wants to be taller, then it would be happening. The fact that it is very, very, very rare is because it is so, so difficult. And then if you did your research and found out how painful it is, a lot of people...
मेरी बोन, घुटने के नीचे की बोन काट दी गई, तब मुझे बहुत तकलीफ होने लग गया। तब मैंने ऐसा सोचा नहीं था कि मेरे साथ ऐसा होगा।
The operation cost his family $3,000.
और मुझे बहुत तकलीफ होने लग गया। कुछ 2 महीने में इतना तकलीफ में था, चलने नहीं जम रहा था, खाने नहीं जम रहा था, पीने नहीं जम रहा था, मुझे बहुत तकलीफ होने लग गया। इन्फेक्शन हुआ, फिर सेकेंड ऑपरेशन हुआ, ऐसे 3-4 ऑपरेशन किए, तब भी वो नाकामयाब रही। वो डॉक्टर फेल रही उस ऑपरेशन में। डॉक्टर से बहुत सलाह ली, बट डॉक्टर कुछ करने की तैयारी नहीं थी, वो मेरी गलती मान रही थी।
AJ believes that because he came from a poor family, that the doctor and the colleagues she instructed to do the later operations experimented on him.
ये सब एक एक्सपेरिमेंट के रूप में उन्होंने, मतलब वो देखना चाहते थे कि क्या ये बच्चे पर असर होता है, या ऑपरेशन के बाद ये बच्चे की हाइट जल्दी बढ़ती है काफ़ी हद तक। मैं बहुत रोता था दिन में, रात में। ये बीमारी से मैं कभी उभरा ही नहीं। आज तक वो टेंशन है ही मुझे। मैं तो सोचता था कि मैं कहीं, मम्मी को मैं बहुत बोलता था, मम्मी मुझे कुछ अच्छा पॉइजन दे दो कि मैं मर जाऊँ।
To remain anonymous.
working on the external Ilizarov method on my tibia. I never felt a worse feeling in my life, really.
The operation is costing Rahul $31,000. That's on top of the $18,500 he paid for the previous procedure.
He is hell-bent to get 6 inches, and we had to use the internal device for thighs because we can't use an external device on thighs.
Against Dr. Sareen's advice, Rahul has opted for a magnetic system different to the hydraulic device he usually uses and one he's not operated with before. Like the tibia operation, a nail is inserted into the femur, the thigh bone, and the bone is then broken by a plunger. But instead of screws to widen the distance between both parts of the bone, a computerized magnet determines how far the two ends are pulled apart to allow the bone to regenerate.
It's not something that you can just say I did. Like even like an eye job or nose job is more acceptable, but this is something that's controversial, like I would say like a gender change. You can get judged for it all.
Going fine till he was the 3.5 centimeters and this thing, and suddenly everything like went wrong for him. The job pressure increased, he could not handle it. So it's normal, it's normal.
The doctor now has to persuade him not to give up and stop the lengthening process, or it won't have been worth the pain. Rahul's surgery to extend his thigh bones is starting. But the team is still trying to study the magnetic device that lengthens the limb.
Now F9. Now we have to, again, once we are going in surgeon domain, we have to press F3 3 times, right?
The manufacturers of the device have sent in their own doctor to help, but even she is studying the instruction manual.
We're doing a bilateral femoral lengthening at present for the cosmetic purpose with the intramedullary nail. It's an electromagnetic nail which goes inside the femur, and there is an external device. A person can lengthen itself every day 1 millimeter. So this is a little technical surgery.
As with the operation, eventually decides to make a video call to the manufacturer.
Yeah.